Hello everybody, welcome to Life is Brutal. It is the end of the week, so that means it is time for another episode of This Week in Beer, the second of my channel where we go through and we talk about some of the hardest hitting, the most interesting and intriguing news stories coming out of beer and the beer industry. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, this week is going to be significantly shorter than other weeks because it seems only thing anyone can talk about this week is the government shutdown and how it is affecting the beer industry. It is important. I mean, not only is our country in a gridlock, but even more terrifying, so is our beer. I mean, seriously, that's all anybody's talking about. Even the big dogs took a crack at it.
Folks, this government shutdown has already affected hundreds of thousands of workers. People at the EPA, for God's sake. And it's just going to get worse because now it's coming for your beer. The government shutdown is holding craft beers hostage because breweries can't get labels approved for new beers. No new beer? Just got real.
So as I was saying, this week is going to be significantly shorter because I respect the viewers and I respect your time, so I'm not going to waste it with a bunch of fluff pieces. But I do have a couple very interesting stories, so I do hope it's going to be a very entertaining episode for you all. So let's just jump right into it. Now, I know a lot of you out there hate Bud Light, and it could be for their flavor, or it could be more likely for their underhanded, shady tactics that they use throughout the beer industry to keep the innovators and the geniuses and craft beer down while they try to bolster their own pockets. It's a significant problem, not gonna lie. But I try to be fair and impartial here, and I gotta give credit where credit is due. Bud Light did something this week that I have to give them major kudos for. They are going to be the first nationwide distributed beer that is going to attach a nutrition label to all of their packaging, to include the boxes and to include each individual bottle. It's pretty cool because it allows you to look, it's got 110 calories per 12 ounce can, total fat, the saturated fat, trans fat, carbohydrates, 6.5 grams of sugar and protein. And you might be thinking to yourself, all right, it's just a nutrition label, who cares? It's not that big of a deal. Well, I would like to disagree with you. I think that more breweries should start attaching nutrition labels to them if they have the capability to do so. There is a massive surge in the industry right now where people are starting to lean a little bit more towards low-cal and lighter beers because of the perceived healthier option, you know, after a decade or so of slamming pastry stouts, we've all put on a little weight, got a beer belly and an extra chin, and you know, now it's time to slim down, but we don't want to give up our beer in the process. And being able to look at a nutrition label on a beer really helps us incorporate that into our diets. But I do think this is an exceptionally bold move for Bud Light in particular. See, in the world of light beer, it does have that perception. Light, healthy, or at least lower calorie. And it has a lot of competition, you know. Bud Light goes up against Miller Lite and Coors Light and non-light, light, all that stuff. And they're all viable options for the low-calorie perceived thing, you know. So with that being such a major selling point for Bud Light, seeing them slap a nutrition label on the front, it could help them. But if other breweries were to follow suit and they were able to undercut them on calories and they were able to undercut them on total carbohydrates and fat and all that other stuff, it could really, really hurt Bud Light in the long run if they're not able to compete, if they're not as healthy. And to be so on the sleeve about their nutritional contents, I do really appreciate it, but it could put them at a significant disadvantage, as I was saying, if their competition was able to undercut them. Additionally, why I find this such an interesting move for Bud Light is that in addition to the nutrition label, they're also going to be attaching an ingredient list, which reads as water, barley, rice, and hops, which I wonder why they left yeast out of it. Maybe it's too beer nerd sciencey for them, but I don't know. Anyways, one of the reasons I think that that is, again, such an interesting move is because they know that craft beer is one of their major competitors. And one of the things that they try to do is try to eke their way into the market as best as possible. Try to, if they can't be somebody's like fascination, maybe they could be a craft beer drinker's standard day-to-day go-to, their lawnmower beers, if you will. And within the industry as a whole, even in the macro side, we have started seeing pushback against adjuncts, particularly rice. Rice has kind of been vilified in the beer industry as being just a fluff item, you know, a way to cut costs and cut corners while being able to save money yet still give it the right amount of sugar for fermentation to reach the right OGs and FGs and SGs and all that stuff. But to boldly proclaim it on your label, I just think that's a real interesting decision. I'm not quite sure why they decided to do that, but maybe it's just a part of being just more forthcoming. But whatever their motive is, I am glad to finally see somebody pull the trigger on this, because it's something that I have personally been wanting to see for a long time. As somebody who has to maintain a certain physical appearance for my job, I do have to watch caloric intake, and I cut my actual food intake out. That way I can make room for beer calories. And if more breweries were able to attach that nutrition label onto it, those of us who have to diet but still love drinking beer, we would have such an easier time being able to incorporate more beer into our dietary plans, you know. And with a full nutrition label, we're able to measure micros and macros, and it would just be really beneficial. Additionally, I hope they follow suit, because there was a study that came out this week that correlated beer bellies with brain size, and they say the bigger your beer belly is, the more likely it is you got a tiny micro brain. So I don't want people thinking I'm fat and stupid. So I got to give kudos where they are deserved, and that is to Bud Light this time. So good job, Bud Light. Keep it up. Great job. So moving on to the segment where we talk about beers that were announced or released this week. The first one just warms my soul in a very evil kind of way. If you know me, you know that I am a huge fan of sassiness and sarcasm, and this beer is basically the liquid embodiment of that. Wiley Roots Brewing Company out of Colorado released a Helly's Lager this week. And normally a Helly's Lager wouldn't necessarily get my attention, you know, it's a very standard beer offering throughout the entire world, so another one on the market doesn't really catch headlines. But this one in particular, oh, it's just dripping with juicy drama. This new Helly's Lager is going under the name of beer flavored beer. So to get why this is so funny, we got to take a look back. Last week, Anheuser-Busch released an Instagram post where they were showcasing their nice little pony show of Wicked Weed. They proudly announced that finally, freaking finally, sour beer had reached the shores of North America, all thanks to Anheuser-Busch and Wicked Weed. That would be true if you just completely overlooked the booming sour industry that's been going on in American craft beer scene for almost an entire decade now. Well, that seemed to have stricken a nerve with the folks over at Wiley Root Brewing, because they decided that this Helly's Lager was going to be adorned with a very close mimicry of the King of Beer's label itself. And it was going to adorn the title of beer flavored beer in an obvious mockery. And it accompanied a magnificent Instagram post as well. Now, I've never had anything from Wiley Roots, but if I was back in the States, I would definitely go out of my way to try to hunt this one down, just because it is just, God, it's so delicious in the satire. So if you're in the area of Colorado or within Wiley Root's distribution footprint, I highly encourage you to give this one a try. It's I don't know how the beer actually is itself, but it is kind of a nice little middle finger to big beer, you know. The next beer being released this week is coming out of San Diego, the whale's vagina itself. The High Style Brewing Company is soon to release the Pale Haze Pale Ale, which is going to be infused with pure THC. Now, I don't think that's anything too crazy in itself. In the past years, we've seen a line of THC infused beers going out everywhere. But this one is going to be interesting because it'll be the first non-alcoholic THC infused beer in the state of California. Their decision making behind the design of this beer's recipe was pretty funny. They said that they absolutely loved the taste of craft beer, yet they hated its side effects, mainly dehydration, which is like the most San Diegan thing I could ever hear. So they decided to brew a non-alcoholic beer that has THC infused in it, and you should be able to feel its effects within 30 minutes. That way you're able to decide if you need to ingest more, or if you're good and you just need to like couch lock yourself and ride it out. So I do think it is extremely interesting to see the industry continue to move towards two new burgeoning areas: the boom of THC beer and the boom of low ABV and non-alcoholic beer. This could be the most beautiful fusion, and I think the market is right for this to be an extreme hit. If this was available, if weed was available on a federal level, then this beer, I could see it just exploding. So shame on you, federal government, for being a bunch of prudes. Pale Haze is now available in several dispensaries around the San Diego area, but as I mentioned earlier, it is looking at a full statewide rollout in the upcoming weeks. Now, I did joke on them a little bit earlier, but I do 100% support everything that the High Style Brewing Company is doing. Every step towards the normalization of marijuana is a step closer to federal legalization as far as I'm concerned. So, in my opinion, they're doing God's work. They're putting in the effort to try to change the way that this country operates, and I think for the better. Once again, huge kudos to y'all. This is like the kudos episode. Usually in this segment of new beers and beer releases, I try to do 3, but because of the shutdown and the way the whole TTB is gridlocking the beer industry, I just really couldn't find anything more interesting to talk about. So moving back into the news, once again, we don't really have anything else to talk about. But I do have a follow-up to a story I covered last week, which includes Goose Island offering free beer for a year to anybody who is able to go out and kick a 43-foot or 43-yard field goal. Now, if you don't remember, I will summarize real quick. Last week, Goose Island offered free beer for a year to anybody who was able to kick this field goal as an act of solidarity with their local NFL team, the Chicago Bears, who suffered a pretty bad defeat because of a missed field goal. And the kicker was getting relentlessly heckled online. So Goose Island was like, hey, step up, put your money where your mouth is and come out here and kick it in front of everybody. And if you do, you get free beer. Anyways, fast forwarding to current week, Goose Island had to rescind that offer because apparently they were notified that they were in violation of Illinois state law, which prohibits them from being able to give out beer for free. So instead, they decided to offer free tickets to the Super Bowl, which I think is a much better deal monetarily, but that free beer for a year would have been nice. Anyways, no one made it. Not a single person who showed up to kick the field goal made the field goal. So I guess they kind of lucked out that way. They didn't have to worry about the free beer anyway. They could have said they were going to continue promoting it and not giving a shit because no one got it anyway. But what it did give us, the viewers, was a live stream that broadcasted the entire kicking event, and it left us with a beautiful gem like this. We are so lucky to be born in an era with this level of technology and be graced with such amazing feats of athleticism. Anyways, definitely an interesting moment in beer history, to say the least. So, as I said, this was the last thing we had to talk about in This Week in Beer. Hopefully the government can get their shit together, or maybe someone starts some crazy drama or something, so next week's This Week in Beer is a bit more interesting. I made it a New Year's resolution that I was going to do it weekly, and this government shutdown is really fucking up my vibe. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, despite the shortness of it and the lack of hard-hitting stories, but I did the best I could. I did as much research as I could, and that's what you get. I hope you stick around to see what I got coming up next week. Hopefully it's good. Like, comment, subscribe, and cheers, y'all.